Hello and welcome to the editorial analysis of The Hindu. Today we shall be discussing the editorial of the 21st of May. So coming to the first article, moral ambiguity on the Rohingya. Now basically the context of this article is that there was a draft resolution that has been forwarded in the United Nations Human Rights Commission on the Rohingya issue, and India has decided, or India has abstained from voting on this particular resolution, and as a result of which this topic is what is again in news. The Rohingya issue is an old one and it is a constant issue, it is a background issue, so it is also an important one, and it has become again important because of this recent development. Now coming to the issues which are important, the first issue that is important is with regards to this resolution itself. Now first and foremost, you should know that this resolution was what was sponsored by Bangladesh as well as by the European Union. So these were the two groups who were behind this particular resolution. Also, this resolution was about the human rights violation that is taking place in the Rakhine province, the Kachin province as well as the Shan states in Myanmar. These are few names that you should try to remember. These kind of details, if you offer in your answers, it gives a good impression. Here are the names, that is Rakhine, Kachin as well as the Shan state. So it is in these particular areas that the Rohingya is an issue. This is a small group of people, it is a small tribe that is living in this particular region, and they are being targeted primarily because they are Muslims in their religion. So it is a religious minority in this particular region here, and they are one of the most exploited communities in the entire world for that matter. They are facing a lot of atrocities. There is a lot of human rights violation that is taking place in the context of the Rohingya. So as a result of this entire issue is important, but India's stand is rather lukewarm, and as a result of which this matter becomes ethically and morally also important for India. So that is what is the entire analysis or gist of this particular article. Now coming to the next issue which is important, the issue is with regards to this India being a non-signatory to the International Criminal Court. Now basically what has happened here is that it was expected, and under this particular resolution, that the ICC is going to interfere in the human rights violation that is taking place, and also ICC is going to hold an inquiry. And after this inquiry, the International Criminal Court is also going to intervene within the Rohingya matter. But the issue is that even Myanmar is not a signatory to the ICC, and so is India. So India has a stand to not agree to this kind of a clause, because India itself, being a non-signatory, believes that when India is not signatory to the ICC, then how can such measures or such stringent punitive action by the ICC be accepted by India? So that is the reason that India has given for not signing or abstaining from voting on this particular resolution. So that is the background of this entire issue. Next is the issue of passivity that India is showing. Now the editorial is discussing that India's stand on this entire issue is rather passive. Especially India is passive morally as well as diplomatically also. India is showing a passive stand. So that is what has been discussed here. Next is the issue of the United Nations FFM, which is the fact-finding mission which the United Nations was supposed to send to Rohingya. Even the United Nations fact-finding mission has found a lot of lapses in the government action towards controlling torture, or for that matter violation of human rights against the Rohingyas. So these are some facts that are coming out where it is well proven that this particular community in Myanmar is at the suffering end of the government, and still India is reluctant in taking a stand on this, is what is been discussed in this editorial. Next, what is important is with regards to the India-Myanmar relation. Now definitely India has had a tenuous relationship with Myanmar in the past. You should know that India had, once the military government came in power in Myanmar, India was not having a good relation with Myanmar at that point of time, and it is very recently that India has re-established its relationships with Myanmar. Also, India has one of the longest borders with Myanmar, and Myanmar is important for India primarily because of the China factor also. So for all of these reasons, India wants to ensure that a neutral stand is what is adopted, so that India-Myanmar relations are what do not suffer. Another angle to the India-Myanmar relation is the arms as well as the business ties that India has with Myanmar. This again is something that is important because India is selling a large number of arms are what are being supplied from India to the Myanmar army, and as a result of which India for India, Myanmar is what is important. So in that context also it is being accused that for its personal gains, India is not talking on this very, very important issue. Next, what is important here is that you should know Bangladesh is suffering because of this issue of Rohingyas. What is happening is that a large number of refugees, a large number of the Rohingya refugees are entering Bangladesh, and that is what is the cause of concern for Bangladesh. And it is for this reason that this particular resolution was what was sponsored by Bangladesh also. Now the issue here is that because India is not supporting this particular resolution, this might have a negative impact on the India-Bangladesh relation. So that is what has been discussed here. And lastly, the gist of this entire issue is that a moral and ethical question is what is raised. The issue that is important here is that India should not, at this point of time, India should not only consider about its own gains, rather it should take a larger view. It should consider the bigger picture, where the rights of these people are what are being suffered. And India is a major country in the South Asia, and as a result of which India should take a moral high ground in this particular issue. Also, India has good relations with Myanmar at this point of time. So India could also ask Myanmar to bring the alleged perpetrators of war crimes against Rohingyas to book. So these are some actions that are expected out of India, out of a country that is as big as India in South Asia. So in that context, this editorial is discussing that India needs to take a bigger stand on the Rohingya issue. So that is the entire analysis of this particular article. The issue is important in international relations. Also, the issue has ethical undertones, so you can use this as an example if you have scope in your ethics paper. So that is going to be the relevance of this particular article. Coming to the next article, I on the monsoon. Now the context here is with regards to the recent forecasts by the IMD on the monsoon. Now as per these forecasts, it is being expected that the monsoon this year is going to be a normal monsoon, and as a result of it, some data is also what has been given. For example, the long period average of 89 centimeter of rainfall is what is expected. All of this data is what I don't feel personally is very, very important. What is important are the issues that are discussed in this editorial, which make this entire issue important, because monsoon is something that India is very much dependent upon. And as a result of which, monsoon and monsoon patterns are what become relevant for us. Questions on this are what we can expect. Now the first issue is with regards to the importance of the monsoon itself. Now here you should know that monsoon, largely we have a tendency that whenever we are discussing about the monsoons, we only discuss about its importance on agriculture. But definitely monsoon has importance on several other issues, not only agriculture. It is important for the health of the forests. It is important for rivers. It is important for the wetlands. 60% of the gross cropped area in agriculture is what is dependent on rainfall. So all of these data what have been offered in this particular article, in this part of this article, and this is what I suggest is very, very important. It gives a all-encompassing view of the importance of monsoon. So if you are supposed to write, this is how you have to present it in the UPSC answers. Next, what is very, very important is the relation between pollution and rainfall. Now, a few years back, there was a question in the UPSC mains where a relation was what was drawn between pollution and winter season. So these kind of non-related issues, whenever there is some scope of a relation between these issues which students cannot, for that matter, directly guess, then those are the questions that UPSC does ask, because this is a question which is going to require application, and I found this kind of a discussion that was there in this particular article, and that is why I have picked it up for discussion. Now basically here you need to know that pollution as such has both a positive as well as negative impact on rainfall. At some places some type of pollution can increase the rainfall, whereas at some places some type of pollution can decrease the rainfall, is what has been analyzed in this particular article. For example, some types of aerosols will help in dispersing the rainwater, and as a result of which, what is going to happen is that rainfall is not going to happen in that particular region. Whereas some type of pollutants and some type of aerosol can be such which might absorb heat, and this might result in an increased convection effect, and this might result in increased rainfall, is what has been discussed. So this is one important aspect that I found in this particular article. Next, what is important is that how should we ensure that monsoons are best utilized, or the water from monsoons that India receives is best utilized, is what this editorial is discussing. It is calling for recharging of wells so that groundwater is what is recharged. Groundwater at present in India is one of the biggest concerns. This is one of the most threatened water resource in the country. So the editorial is calling for setting up recharging wells. Also, what is required is that surface water is what is harvested. Increase in efficiency in irrigation is what is advocated. Rainwater harvesting is what is being suggested. Also, the editorial is next discussing about the relation between monsoons and urbanization. Now, because of urbanization, water demand is increasing in urban areas. Water stress is also there in urban areas. So, the editorial is advocating that in such a scenario, the careless attitude that the government is showing is what cannot be accepted, especially for a resource like water, which is life-giving. So, definitely actions by the government are what are being demanded here. So, that is what has been discussed. These issues are what are important vis-a-vis the monsoon, because largely you will not be expected to give about the facts about factual data about how much is the rainfall, but rather this analysis about monsoons is what becomes important, and this is what you shall be expected in your answers. So that is why this particular article is important. So that's about this article. Coming to the next article, I have clubbed two articles. One is about a recent episode in Yemen which has happened. Now basically you should know in Yemen there are some terrorist groups. They are known as the Houthi rebels. Now this is a group that is being financed by Iran, and what has happened is that this terrorist group has conducted a drone attack on a pipeline that belonged to Saudi Arabia. And because of this pipeline being attacked, Saudi Arabia has come into the picture and it has conducted airstrike on Yemen, primarily as an answer to Iran. So this is one issue that has happened, and this has caused disturbances in the entire West Asian region. So this is one thing that is important. Next, what is important is the case against war on Iran is what an editorial is. This editorial is about the entire analysis with regards to a possibility of a US military action in Iran, which is being anticipated. So in that context, this particular article is what has been written. So that is the context. Now coming to the issues. The first issue is with regards to Yemen and Saudi Arabia. This I have discussed already. I have told you what has happened. The bombings by Saudi Arabia in Yemen is what has taken place recently, and as a result of which tensions are what are high in this particular region. So this is what you should know. Next, what is important here is with regards to the US military action. Now US has sent its bombers in this particular region. US has sent its military arsenal in this particular region, and so the tensions are what are heightened, and a war-like situation is what is existing at present. Also, what is important and which is the most important aspect of this particular editorial is the moral wrong that has been analyzed. Now here you should know that an agreement was what was signed. It was the nuclear deal which was signed, which was known as the P5+1 agreement. This was the agreement that was signed between 6 countries as well as Iran. Iran signed this agreement. Iran agreed to follow the norms that were discussed in this particular agreement. But still what has happened is that instead of being rewarded for signing this agreement, Iran has been punished, and as a result of which the editorial is discussing that if any military action is what is going to be taken against Iran, despite the fact that it signs in the nuclear deal, then that is what is going to be an immoral act. So that is what this editorial is discussing vis-a-vis the moral spectrum. Also, what is important is a comparison between Iran as well as Iraq. Now the editorial is discussing that US had in the past attacked Iraq also, but there is a difference between Iran and Iraq, primarily because when US attacked Iraq, almost all the countries were favoring US, but that is not the case today. Russia and China are clearly against US attack in Iran, so that is the first case. Also, Iran is comparatively much more stronger than Iraq, primarily because Iran has always been war ready. Also, Iran has a lot of terrorist groups that it is financing. For example, the Hezbollah in Libya. It has militias in Iraq, Syria, as well as in Gaza. Also about the Houthi rebels that we have studied right now. Also, Iran is controlling a large part of the Strait of Hormuz. So, Iran is very much more powerful than Iraq, and as a result of which, US has to be wary of attacking Iran. So, that is what has been discussed. Next, what has been discussed here is with regards to the war record of US, which is very, very poor. For example, in Afghanistan, US has not reaped any benefit. In Syria, the country is in civil war. Libya, again in civil war. Iraq, again in civil war. So all of these countries were the ones that were at war with US, but US has not had a clear victory in any country. So in keeping this record in mind, the US should refrain from attacking Iran is what has been discussed. And lastly, the editorial is calling for the use of diplomacy instead of military action as a solution to the problems in Iran as well as in West Asia. So that is the entire analysis of these particular articles. The issue is what is important whenever it comes to discussing Iran as well as West Asia. So in international relations is where the importance of these articles are. So that is the relevance. And that's about our discussion today. I thank you all for watching the video.